音楽がある限り踊り続ける。
Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Moxie. We're going to be taking a look at how strong New World's elemental damage gems are. Are they even worth it? I will be doing 3 types of tests for every weapon in New World. First test will be damage based on 100 points in the main attribute. Second will be main attribute with a fire gem slotted. And third will be 100 points into intelligence only. I'm going to be unequipping all my armor, putting me into a light armor class, giving me 20% more damage. We will begin the strength attribute with the hammer. As you can see, there's 100 points committed into strength. Since the hammer doesn't have any secondary attributes, all the damage will be coming from the strength tree. Now we have the hammer with a fire gem slotted and 100 points into the strength tree. Now this specific hammer comes with 10 included intelligence, so the damage numbers are going to be slightly skewed versus the full intelligence build. We have the hammer with a fire gem slotted and 100 points committed into intelligence. In overview with the hammer, the raw strength build ended up with 119 strike damage, 143 strike damage on crit. And the strength build with a fire gem slotted ended up with 95 strike damage and 22 fire damage, totaling 117 damage. And the crit ended up being 114 strike damage plus 27 fire damage, equaling 141 damage. Finally, the intelligence build with the slotted gem ended up being 51 strike damage, 35 fire damage, totaling 86, and the crit ended up being 68 strike damage plus 47 fire damage, equal a total of 115. In all, your raw strength build does the most damage. When you slot a gem, you do slightly less damage, and if you just do full intelligence, you do significantly less damage. Moving on to the Great Axe with no gem slotted and 100 points into strength. Here's the Great Axe slotted with a fire gem and 100 points into the strength tree. Finally, a Great Axe with a fire gem slotted and 100 points into the intelligence tree. Overview for the Great Axe. You have your basic attacks in white and your critical strikes in orange. Overall, it looks like strength does the most total damage, and then strength with the gem does slightly less. And then you have intelligence with the gem that does more elemental damage. However, it does less damage overall. Moving on to the hatchet, we have actually 17 dexterity in this one because this hatchet gives us those extra points, but still 100 points into strength. So it won't make too much of a difference when we do the intelligence comparison because the dexterity is a secondary trait for the hatchet. So we will still see that damage in the intelligence testing. Here's the hatchet with the slotted fire gem, 100 strength, and the same amount of dexterity as it did with the raw build. Hatchet with fire gem slotted, 100 intelligence, and the same amount of dexterity as the other two builds. Once again, you have basic attacks in white and then critical strikes in orange. You can kind of see a pattern with all the strength builds here. You'll get most damage overall using a raw strength build. If you add a gem, you'll get slightly less damage. However, you will have that elemental damage added to it. And then intelligence, you'll have the most elemental damage, but least total damage. Next up, we have sword without the shield. This sword does give us a little bit of dexterity, so we'll have a total of 13 dexterity, but 100 points into strength and the same amount of intelligence. Here is sword with a fire gem slotted, 100 strength, 13 dexterity, and still 5 intelligence. Finally, we have the sword with the slotted fire gem, 100 points into intelligence, and the dexterity is the same as the other two tests. Once again, a full strength build will be giving you the most damage. Adding a gem will not decrease your damage by much, but doing full intelligence with a gem, you're not going to get as much damage as you can. This wraps it up for all the weapons in the strength category. Next, we're going to be working on the dexterity weapons. Rolling into the next category is going to be the spear. We're going to have 100 points into dexterity. Onto the spear with a fire gem slotted, 100 points into dexterity. The spear with a fire gem slotted and 100 points into intelligence. Overview of the spear, you'll have basic attacks in white and critical strikes in orange. Again, it looks like the best for the spear would be a full dexterity build, and then dexterity with a gem does slightly less damage. Intelligence will do the most elemental damage, but least damage overall. Moving along to the rapier. So the rapier will be interesting because the rapier also scales off of intelligence damage. This one has 100 dexterity and 20 into intelligence. The rapier with a slotted fire gem, 100 dexterity and 20 into intelligence. The rapier with a slotted fire gem and 100 points into intelligence. So this is where it could get a little skewed, because if we wanted to kind of stay standard with the other tests, we would probably have 120 intelligence. However, we do have the musket coming up next, and you can just look at that to compare. Overall for the rapier, you'll have your basic attacks in white and your critical strikes in orange. So it looks like this is the first time where the critical strike damage for the intelligence build does more damage than the dexterity build. The basic attacks for the intelligence build only do slightly less damage than the full dexterity build, making this a viable option to do. Also remember, the dexterity build got that extra 20 points into intelligence. However, the intelligence build only had 100 points in intelligence and no extra points into dexterity. Next up is the musket, like I promised. This one only has 100 points into dexterity and 18 points into intelligence. Now we have the musket with the fire gem slotted, 100 points into dexterity, 18 points into intelligence. Finally, a musket with a fire gem slotted and 100 points into intelligence. Again, you're going to see slightly less damage than the dexterity build because the dexterity had that extra intelligence, and the musket scales off of both dexterity and intelligence. So overview, you have the basic attacks in white, the critical strikes in orange. Please excuse the typo, the very bottom one should be intelligence with the gem instead of dexterity with the gem. But the intelligence build's damage is pretty close to the dexterity build. You also have to remember that the dexterity build got that extra 18 attribute points, affecting its overall damage. Now on to the last weapon in the dexterity build tree, which would be the bow. We're using the steel arrows that give us 1.10 times damage, 100 points into dexterity. We also have 11 points into intelligence. This is only going to affect the damage on the gem. Now we have the bow with the fire gem slotted, 100 points into dexterity and 11 points into intelligence. Now we have our intelligence build with a fire gem slotted on the bow, 100 points into intelligence. Now the intelligence only affects the damage on the slotted fire gem. Finally, with the bow, we have it's actually torso shots in the white and the head shots in the orange. This is the same with the musket from the last section. Overall, the dexterity build will be doing the most damage, whereas the dexterity with the gem will do slightly less damage, and intelligence with the gem will do significantly less damage. Now for my users who use the attribute for only one weapon, the life staff, we have 100 points into focused. Slotting a fire gem into the life staff on 100% focus. Lastly, we have the life staff with a fire gem slotted and 100 points into intelligence. Again, we have the basic attacks in white and the critical strikes in orange. Overall, if you use a full intelligence build with a gem on the life staff, you do about 8% less damage than you would if you just did full focus. It also looks like if you do a full focus build and you add a elemental gem on it, you do about the same amount of damage, just your nature and your fire damage has been divided up. Now, just for testing purposes, we're going to test out the Ice Gauntlet with no gem slotted and 100 points into intelligence. Now we're going to slot a fire gem on the Ice Gauntlet and see how that goes. So this was kind of a surprise to me. If you add a gem to your intelligence build gauntlets, you're going to do more damage than you would if you didn't have a gem. However, you'll be doing less ice damage. So I guess it depends on the enemy you're facing and what their weaknesses are. Now we can't test the Ice Gauntlet and not test the Fire Staff. So here we have an ungemmed Fire Staff with 100 points into intelligence. Now we have the Fire Staff gemmed with an Ice Gem. It doesn't allow fire gems to be on the Fire Staff. So kind of the same as the Ice Gauntlet, you'll do more damage if you slot a gem onto your Fire Staff than you would if you didn't have a gem. Also, I didn't manage to get a critical strike with the Fire Staff while it was gemmed. So we could just assume it's the same as the Ice Gauntlet and does much more damage than the Intelligence without the gem. Now, I wanted to make sure you saw this diagram on enemy weaknesses. I don't want you walking away from this video thinking that elemental gems are only good on intelligence weapons. There are many different types of enemies that you should mix and match your gems with to fill in your weapon's downfalls. For example, ancients are more resistant to slash damage, so if you're using any weapon that does slash damage, slotting a lightning gem will make up for that damage loss against the ancients. Sure, I'll leave a link to this diagram in the description below. Thank you for watching and liking this video. If you have any other tips, please leave them in the comments below. Bye!